Ujima is a desperate simp who enjoys being surrounded by girls in the food research club. His everyday life changes when he is forced to run for the student council elections to marry his lifelong crush.
Nice.
The scene opens up with Chisato preparing for school. However, instead of going out through the door, she decides to visit the next apartment via her balcony to annoy Ujima. Seeing how he is not waking up, Chisato throws him out of the bed and screams after realizing that the weirdo sleeps commando. Afterward, the two of them meet up with Mafuyu, who is waiting for their arrival. She notices a slap mark on his face and figures that Chisato is the culprit. Mafuyu does a little play in order to make the pain go away, and this act of kindness makes Ujima confess his love. However, she rejects him on the spot while knowing it is an act. The pedestrians start staring at them, which prompts the three of them to leave. Ujima steps into the club room and notices Mikairu trying to find something.
Nice.
Afterward, she takes a look at Chisato and says the word pink. Ujima asks Chisato if she is wearing pink-colored plot, resulting in him getting choked. Just then, Nozomi arrives along with Ayami and Kiai. Later, Nozomi opens a closet and an infinite number of candies come out of it, burying Nozomi and making the other two fall on the ground. Afterward, Aburo steps in and brings a box full of snacks that were produced by his family company. Ayumu comments that whoever marries Aburo will be one lucky girl. However, Aburo has other plans and asks Ujima about this deal. He further tells Ujima to eat his long bar, but he breaks it using his hands, crushing the hopes Aburo had. Chisato takes some from Ujima, but he stops her from eating it, letting her know that it is chocolate. Aburo realizes that Chisato doesn't like chocolate and apologizes for not mentioning it earlier. Suddenly, Heizuki barges in and enjoys a cold glass of drink. Afterward, she tells everyone that their club might be disbanded. On the other hand, everyone is gathered at the school court where everyone starts mocking the student council president. Moheiji, the General Affairs Commissioner, informs everyone that the president failed to investigate the information leak that caused trouble towards the financial aid students. Furthermore, the Public Safety Commissioner, who is a suspect, was appointed by the president himself. According to Moheiji, the president should resign his position, but Satsuki objects as the finance commissioner. Moheiji tells Satsuki that if the president were to resign, then the vice president would be the acting president until the next election. However, Satsuki informs him that the vice president might not be able to handle the duties and his resignation will eventually damage the school. The annoying General Affairs Commissioner starts talking, but Satsuki quiets him down after exposing the inventory of the General Affairs Commission. In conclusion, the school will be going through presidential elections and Satsuki is a candidate as well. She plans on cutting down the needlessly ample number of clubs, which are a burden on the school. Later in class, Ujima, Chisato, Miru, and Ryoji discuss Satsuki's campaign and how their respective clubs are in danger as well. After the classes, the food club holds a meeting and Nozomi highlights the fact that none of them would be able to eat snacks for free if the club ended up getting disbanded. According to Ayumu, Satsuki might end up winning the election as she is insanely beautiful and has noteworthy talents. Heizuki also reveals that Satsuki is actually her little sister, and the similarity between their talents makes it even more believable. Chisato asks Heizuki to convince her sister and ask her not to disband their club. She replies that her sister is stubborn and won't listen to a word she says. The only plan left is to support someone else, but if the candidate is not from General Affairs, Public Safety, or Finance Commissions, then it would be hard for them to win. With that being said, the only chance they have is to support the General Affairs. Afterward, Ujima, Mafuyu, and Chisato decide to check Moheiji's campaign. Surprisingly, Ujima sees a mask on his face, but the girls see him as a normal dude. Suddenly, Moheiji appears and asks Ujima to lend him support in the elections. He also gives him a prepaid card with 100 yen on it. Chisato realizes that he is trying to buy the votes, which might be against the rules of elections. Ujima informs them that the elections are not officially announced yet, which doesn't make it wrong for now. Out of nowhere, a girl comes running and crashes into Ujima. Both of them fall on the ground and she starts apologizing again and again. Ujima reminds her that she is in a hurry, allowing the girl to run away once again. The girl heads straight towards the bus, which makes Mafuyu realize that she must be a financial aid student and needs to work in a factory after school. Ujima notices that the girl left her keys, and they head back to the club. Chisato informs everyone that she won't be voting for that corrupt loser, and they need to think of a new plan. Heizuki gives them the idea to run in the election and try to win instead of relying on other candidates. She tells everyone that it is better to rely on a slight chance rather than letting the club disband without doing anything. Chisato agrees with this plan as it is better than waiting to be crushed. One by one, all the club members agree to this, and eventually it is time to choose who will be the candidate. All the girls point their fingers towards Ujima. All the club members agree to make him the president as there is no other better choice. This comes as a surprise for Heizuki as she never expected someone like him to be this popular. The next morning, Ujima is dreaming about one of his childhood memories where he and Chisato greeted the bride at her wedding. These two invited the bride to their wedding as well without even knowing what love really was. Afterward, he wakes up and finds Chisato lying right next to him and mocks Ujima for talking in his sleep. Soon, he gets tired of her blabbering and kicks her out of his bed. He tries going back to sleep, letting Chisato know that he will try to find nice girls for himself in the world of dreams as the real world is a little too much for him to handle. However, she tells him that there is a club meeting to attend. Ujima replies that he will be quitting the club and will not run for the election either. Later at the club, Mifuyu and the girls are taking a look at Satsuki's manifesto, and the food club's name appears on the top of the list of clubs that are going to be disbanded. However, they are still hopeful that Ujima might be able to save them until Chisato arrives and informs him how he is leaving the club. Meanwhile, Ujima is walking on the streets and Matsuri bumps into him. She doesn't care about the idiot lying on the ground and leaves. Just as he gets back up, Satsuki arrives on her cycle and crashes into him. Afterward, he apologizes for coming in her way, but she seems apologetic for riding at a speed where she couldn't slow down. Satsuki gives Ujima the belongings that he dropped and advises him not to apologize this much as the value of apology drops this way. Before leaving, Ujima informs Satsuki that his name is spelled as Ujima not Ashima. She promises to keep it in mind and leaves. On the other hand, Oboro seems devastated after hearing that Ujima is quitting the club and decides to call him. He starts gaslighting Ujima for betraying his trust and not caring about the love they share with each other. Ujima gets annoyed and cuts the call. Meanwhile, Ujima visits the lost and found section to return Isara's key which she dropped yesterday. She thanked him for coming all this way and informed him that these were the keys to her home. Isara seems confused seeing him at the school on Sunday, and he replies that he had a meeting in the club, even though he decided to quit a few hours ago. Afterward, she realizes that there is somewhere she needs to be and leaves after trading names. On the other hand, Nozomi is crying because Ujima left the club, which makes other members think that she might have had a thing for him. However, all she cares about is the special Ujima role he makes. If he were to leave the club, there would be no way for her to acquire more of them. Meanwhile, Ujima is heading towards the classroom while thinking about the encounters he had with pretty girls. Suddenly, someone bumps into him and he thinks that it might be another cute girl. In reality, they are two barbaric boys who pin him down and start questioning his intentions. Luckily, the former student council president, Yakumo, arrives and tells his underlings to let Ujima go. Afterward, Yakumo notices that Ujima might be planning to run in the presidential election and figures out that it is most likely to save the Food Research Club. Ujima tells him that there is no way for a good-for-nothing loser to win the elections. Yakumo replies that the Public Safety Commission will not be entering a candidate, and this makes it easier for him to win the elections. Before leaving, Yakumo informs Ujima that he will have his support as well. On the other hand, the club members are thinking of a way to change Ujima's mind and force him to run as a candidate. Kai gives them an idea to work on some sort of achievement that can keep them from getting disbanded. Fortunately, she has a perfect plan and takes out the Nero machine she made earlier. Nozomi has high hopes regarding this machine as it can mix multiple contents. In order to test the machine, he mixes a huge amount and pours some water on top. Afterward, she turns on the machine and it starts mixing the content faster and faster. On the other hand, Ujima notices Satsuki trying to fix her cycle and goes to check it out. She calls Ujima by the name of Boijima, as he kept bowing the last time they met. Afterward, Ujima notices that he just needs to fix the chain and quickly do so. However, his hands get dirty in the process and Satsuki lends him her handkerchief. Receiving something from a pretty lady for once makes his day even more exciting. Later, he tells Satsuki about him running as president and asks her the reason behind her intention to disband the food club. Satsuki replies that all they do is eat snacks bought from the school funds and laze around the whole day. They all can do the same thing in the cafeteria, and there is no need for the Food Research Club to exist. He then informs her that it is useless for him to run in the election and no one would vote for a loser like him anyway. This makes Satsuki inform him that only those horses win the race that entered the race in the first place. Even the most formidable and fastest horses won't be able to achieve anything if they decide not to take part. This gives him the motivation he needs, and Ujima heads towards the Food Research Club. As soon as he steps in, Ujima notices that everything is a mess and all the club members are covered in Nero. Ujima finally reveals that he will be taking part in the next presidential election. He further gives the idea of doing an intra-club election to find the person who is most suitable to run in the election. Everyone starts writing the name of the person they believe in, and Ujima writes Chisato's name. Soon after, the results arrive and Ujima ends up being the winner in the end. Instead of diverting the club members' attention towards Chisato, he ended up taking the whole spotlight, and eventually the members started liking his speech. On their way home, Chisato sees chocolate and decides to buy it. Ujima eats the half chocolate while Chisato only holds it in her hands and is glad that Ujima seems to enjoy it. The next day, Chisato converted the club room to campaign headquarters while Ujima went and filed the candidacy form. Now that the basics are complete, no one knows what to do next. Heizuki explains to the club members that they will need to pass the primaries, or they won't be allowed to run in the elections. The primaries are held to discard the weak candidates, and a candidate needs at least 600 votes to clear the primary. However, for a loner like Ujima, it is a very tall task. Chisato informs Ujima that making a good manifesto that will attract people is a must. The other club members give all sorts of options, including increasing the club budgets and making snacks free for the student. However, Ujima thinks that he won't be able to win the election with a manifesto like that. The main problem Ujima is facing is that there is no one to properly guide him, as all the club members are complete idiots. Suddenly, Yakumo enters the club room and Nozomi greets him with a huge smile on her face. Turns out, the two of them are friends, as Yakumo was in Naomi's class during their freshman year. Afterward, Yakumo gets straight to the point and tells Ujima that the Public Safety Commission would like to assist him in his campaign. Heizuki informs the club members that Yakumo will not be offering Ujima help unless there is something in it for him. Yakumo shamelessly agrees and tells them that public affairs don't want to give the president position to either finance or general affairs. Once a group wins the election, it is hard for the others to later step in. He plans to make an independent person like Ujima the president, so all the groups will be on the same level next year. Yakumo further informs them that Satsuki's supporters dropped by 10% after her manifesto was leaked. The main reason behind this is that her rules regarding finance are very strict, which is making most of the clubs against her. Ujima realizes that if he shows to do the opposite, then he might be able to gain their support. According to Yakumo, the General Affairs Commissions will target this exact point after the primaries are over. This gives Ujima and the club the chance to win the hearts of other clubs before anyone jumps in. Afterward, Yakumo promises to give Ujima around 400 votes and asks Ujima to make up the rest. Yakumo also reveals that even though public affairs can't lend them members to help, they can still lend them the know-how about the election, as they have already experienced everything. For now, Yakumo decides to make a contract with Ujima's team until the primaries and later extend it if they start trusting each other more. With the deal being done, Yakumo shakes everyone's hand as they will be working together from now on. Afterward, Heizuki warns Yakumo not to plan anything mischievous or put her students in any sort of danger, and he agrees. Later, the former president starts giving them lessons to succeed in the primaries. According to him, there is no need for a manifesto. Right now, they need to focus on gathering supporters. For this to succeed, Ujima will need to visit the clubs that are facing budget cuts and ask for their support. Yakumo tells Ujima to bring a female member along, as the simps might be easily convinced when a cute girl is standing next to him. One more thing they need to do is gather signatures, as it increases the chances of their supporters giving them the vote as they promised, instead of switching candidates at the end moment. Yakumo baits the girls by letting them know that only cute girls can take the signatures, making Ayumu and Kai the ones to take the job. Later, Ujima and Chisato visit Rieji and Miru and ask them to join an election committee that will support Ujima from behind. Chisato wants them to be the president and vice president of the committee. On the other hand, Ayumu and Kiai are working hard to gather signatures while Nozomi is pasting Ujima's poster on the wall. Subsequently, Heizuki calls Satsuki and starts teasing her for having the courage to meet her alone. Heizuki gets annoyed by her older sister and wants her to get straight to the point. Heizuki asks Satsuki if she wants to disband the food research club because of her. Satsuki refuses and tells her that she won't mix up her personal affairs with the duties she is supposed to perform. Before leaving, Satsuki tells Heizuki that she wants to surpass her and become the student council president that she never became. Heizuki replies that she should just fire her if her hatred is this much, considering the students hire the teachers in the first place. Meanwhile, Ujima is exhausted after a whole day of talking to strangers, and Chisato lends him some money to buy the two of them some drinks. He goes to buy the drinks and Satsuki notices and decides to approach him. She confirms the fact that he is running for president and informs him that the two of them are now rivals. Satsuki leaves after wishing him luck and hoping to compete fairly. A creepy grin appears on his face, but it goes away instantly after realizing that Chisato saw everything. She starts confronting him for being friends with the enemy and puts him in a chokehold. After school, Ujima does some grocery shopping and pays Heizuki a visit. He cooks nikujaga for her, and she seems overjoyed to taste his cooking after a whole 2 weeks. Suddenly, he receives a message from Chisato and Heizuki starts teasing him for having a jealous girlfriend. Ujima tells her that the two of them are not dating, prompting Heizuki to give him the idea of dating her. Ujima warns her to not make such jokes or he will stop visiting her. After they are done eating, Heizuki thanks him for treating her and they both give each other a hug before Ujima leaves. Ujima takes a look at all the candidates running for the president and his confidence starts decreasing. Suddenly, he bumps into a ladder and notices that Isara is using the ladder and is now hanging on the ceiling. He helps her get down and they both talk about the upcoming presidential election. Isara reassures Ujima that he will have her full support. Ujima seems to think that being a financial aid student must be hard. However, Isara is grateful as it allows her to study at the school and she would have been forced to work if it were not for this program. Suddenly, two boys pass by them and mock Isara for smelling bad and comments that broke people should stay out of their school. Ujima tries to go after them but Isara stops him, saying that it has always been like this. Afterward, Isara tells Ujima that their comments have made her anxious regarding her scent and asks him to give it a go and tell her the results. Ujima smells her for a few seconds and is lost thinking about how good she smells. Later, all the club members gather together and talk about how they are short on funds that are required for the election. All the committees receive funds from the school while the individual candidates are forced to finance themselves. Chisato calculates the cost and concludes that they will be needing at least 30,000 and around 50,000 yen is possible. Kia gives them the idea to use the club's funds but Heizuki breaks the bad news, informing them that they are not allowed to use club funds for elections. The only option they have is self-funding. All the members must contribute at least 5,000 yen, which is too hard for the broke club members. Yakumo gives them the idea to sell something at the bazaar which happens every year during the primary. The main reason for the bazaar is to raise campaign funds for the candidate. Nozomi gives them the idea to sell the Ujima roll as it is super delicious and people might end up liking it. Ujima uses his last 2 brain cells to calculate the number of rolls they need to sell in order to get to the 30,000 yen mark. He concludes that a total of 50 rolls will be needed but this is too much for a wimpy guy like him to make. According to him, skipping the class and baking for the whole day will bring them to 20 rolls at maximum. For this to work, they will need to increase the price of the roll and will need to give extra benefits with it as well. Ujima reveals that shaking the hands of the customers won't cost them money, and this can be used as a benefit. However, Ayumu comments that no one would like to shake hands with a loser like him and people might request money to shake his hands instead. Chisato takes it upon herself to think of a plan and tells Ujima to focus on making those 20 rolls. Later, Yakumo brings a box full of his merchandise and informs them that his team handed these items out last year. Ujima thinks that it's not fair, but Yakumo corrects him and informs everyone that it is perfectly fine if the items are recognized as the candidate's campaign goods. Now the problem is to think about something that they can distribute for free and leave a long-lasting impression on the customer. One of the girls tells them to distribute the unused snacks they have stored, but according to Yakumo, this also falls under using the club funds. Luckily, Mikairu gives them the idea to use yai sticks, as they get these snacks from Aburo and distributing them would not be a problem. Soon after, Aburo calls his rich dad and requests a shipment of 3,000 yai sticks for them to distribute. The only thing left is to paste a pamphlet containing Ujima's name and key issues on all the yai sticks. Seeing how long it will take to paste pamphlets on the snacks, Mafuyu gives the idea to use stickers instead, but they will cost them a total of 15,000 yen. Afterward, Chisato receives a call from the election board and finds out that their yai stick plan is approved. She then asks Heizuki to lend them some cash and she takes out 30,000 yen from the most secure place and gives it to them. It is time to paste the labels and Nozomi reveals the little helper robot she built earlier who will be assisting them. On the other hand, Ujima goes out to buy ingredients for the Ujima roll and notices a fat sumo wrestler arguing with Satsuki. He starts confronting her for cutting the budget of the Air Sumo Club. However, she replies that they have found some suspicious entries in their club and most of the funds are going into sumo stew. After the argument ends, Satsuki notices Ujima and both of them walk back together. Ujima comments that she is being too strict on both the students and herself. He further informs her that the school's financial situation might not be this bad and that they don't need to cut the budget of this many clubs. Hearing this makes Satsuki advise Ujima to read her whole manifesto instead of just reading the budget-cutting stuff. On the other hand, a few girls corner Isara and take her away in order to trouble her. Meanwhile, Ujima gets back to the club and the first thing he does is check out Satsuki's manifesto. Satsuki wants to reform the financial aid system and turn it into a more scholarship-based program. Later, Ujima along with Chisato and Mafuyu are walking back home and notices Isara going through the dustbin like a stray dog. Ujima asks Isara about her actions and asks if there is something she needs help with. However, she shouts at him and asks him to leave, insisting that there is nothing wrong with her. Afterward, Isara tries to fix the lights she couldn't fix earlier and remembers how the girls threw her plot away. Mafuyu is writing a speech for Ujima while Chisato just finishes pasting the labels on all the snacks. Ujima shows gratitude to Mafuyu for working this hard on the speech. This prompts them to start their cringy confession act where Ujima gets rejected every time. Later, Ujima brings all the ingredients to the club room and is ready to start baking. Mafuyu is present at the club room as well, and he asks if it is okay for her to skip classes. She replies that it is no problem as she doesn't skip classes all that much anyway. Furthermore, it is her chance to repay Chisato for a favor she did, as it is thanks to her that Mafuyu is present in the club room and is able to have fun with the others. Mafuyu reveals that she transferred to this school after being held back a year due to surgery. Her new class members were uncomfortable around her, and she felt out of place. However, Chisato was the first one to talk to her, which made it easier for Mafuyu to fit in with the others. Due to this, she wants to do her best for the club, which means so much to Chisato. Afterward, Ujima continues working hard on the Ujima roles and Mafuyu keeps working hard on the script. After a while, Ujima is done with 6 roles when suddenly a reporter called Hidaka pays him a visit. She is currently compiling a directory of presidential candidates and wants to interview Ujima. The interview begins and she mistakes his name for Oshima. He tries to correct her, but she ignores his retaliation. She asks Ujima about the key policy of his campaign, but he tells her to correct his name first. She writes it as an answer and later asks about the message he wants to give to his supporters. Ujima once again asks her not to skip the rest and she writes this sentence as his answer. With this, the interview concludes and Hidaka takes her leave. With this being said, Mafuyu is finally done with the speech and Ujima has reached the 8th roll mark. Just then, Aburo arrives and wants to eat some of the rolls Ujima is making. He eats some of the cream that is on Ujima's cheek and leaves. The next one to visit the club room is none other than Nozomi, and she wants to eat some of the Ujima rolls he is making. He refuses at first but eventually changes his mind after seeing Nozomi's puppy's eyes. He agrees to give her the ends of the Ujima roll and she walks away, calling him a true friend. Seeing Ujima work hard makes Mafuyu want to help him in any way possible and offers to make her some tea. While she is busy making the tea, Heizuki pays Ujima a visit and gets a little too close to him. She then sits on his lap and complains that he has been busy simping and hasn't come over to cook for her. Simultaneously, Mafuyu arrives and sees the two of them acting suspiciously. Heizuki makes an excuse and leaves while Mafuyu starts asking Ujima to make Chisato happy and pay attention to her. The last one to visit the club room is Isara. She informs them that all the financial aid students are assigned to each candidate for errands and other similar stuff. Isara is assigned to Ujima, which comes as a surprise as there are a total of 100 plus candidates. The next day, it is finally time for the primaries, and the food club is glad to see their stall this close to the main stage. Soon after, the primaries officially start and everyone dashes towards the stall of their favorite candidate. There are a ton of desperate boys at Satsuki's stall waiting in queue to get the merch that has her face on it. Kai and Ayumu join the other club members after they are done receiving good from the other candidate. However, the person they chose is the General Affairs Committee member Moheiji. Afterward, Ujima and Chisato wander around the hall and bump into Rieji, who are busy selling their own goods. This opportunity was given to them by Chisato in return for being the president and vice president. With that being said, the main event is about to begin and Chisato asks Ujima to get ready for the speech. However, the dimwit forgot it back home, but Mafuyu reassures him that she can just print another copy from the file on her laptop. The club members start distributing the snacks to all the visitors and ask them to support Ujima. Meanwhile, Mikairu appears to be struggling and decides to start off by giving snacks to a lizard. On the other hand, the sales of Rieji and Miru's stalls are flourishing as well and they ask each customer to vote for Ujima as well. Fortunately, Mikairu picks up the pace and is able to distribute the snacks to humans as well. Later, the Ujima rolls are finally on sale and Nozomi announces a price of 300 yen per slice. Ujima seems to be confused as the price they all agreed on was 190 yen. Nozomi informs him that the 300 yen slice comes with the customer getting hand-fed by their favorite cosplayer. Afterward, Kiai and Ayumu make an appearance and inform everyone that they can buy an Ujima roll along with a picture card to take photos with them for only 500 yen. The thirsty boys don't waste a second and run towards their stall to buy the Ujima roll. Suddenly, Aburo arrives, and he is cosplaying as well. Afterward, Miru takes Aburo and Ujima to the stage and asks the two of them to recreate the postures displayed in the book. Aburo starts by feeding Ujima the snack bar and he gracefully accepts it, making all the girls in the background go crazy. The other poses are even creepier, and Ujima decides to run for his life this time. Finally, it is time for the candidates to give a speech. Mafuyu arrives at the right time and brings the speech printouts along. After checking in with the election committee, he heads towards the waiting area and awaits his turn. Surprisingly, the candidate sitting in front of him is none other than Moheiji. He reveals that both of them have the same purpose for standing in the election and asks Ujima to give him support after the primary. However, Ujima replies to the egoistic masked man that he intends to pass the primaries and eventually become the president. On the other hand, opens the file and realizes that she gave Ujima the wrong script. Everyone is doing a great job at the primaries instead of Mafuyu, who accidentally gave Ujima the wrong speech. She plans to go and give the correct speech to him, but suddenly, Ujima's name is called for the speech. Mafuyu realizes that is too late and the shock ends up making her lose consciousness. Meanwhile, just as Ujima is about to head towards the stage, the announcers apologize for the mistake as Moheiji is supposed to be the one to give the speech. Moheiji starts attacking Satsuki for never taking an interest in the club budgets up until the election. He informs all his supporters that the Finance Commission blindly passed all the shady budgets. After spending his whole time badmouthing Satsuki, he walks away after requesting the students to vote for him. Afterward, it's Satsuki's turn and she heads out after greeting Ujima and making sure that the two of them do their best. Meanwhile, Mafuyu finally gains consciousness and after realizing that Ujima's turn hasn't arrived, she runs away once again. While Satsuki is giving the speech, Moheiji pays Ujima a visit and tells him that Satsuki has wonderful and genuine policies that can benefit both the school and the student body. Furthermore, she also has the look and popularity to go along with her other attributes. He further adds that even though her straightforward personality makes her words more convincing, her straightforwardness could also work against her. Soon after, Ujima realizes that his turn might be next and he needs to review the speech one more time. However, as soon as he starts to read it, Ujima realizes that the speech seems a little goofy and is different from the one he practiced. The speech that Mafuyu accidentally gives Ujima is about her hidden crush on him, and he eventually finds out in the most unusual way. Finally, it is his turn and Ujima starts walking towards the stage. Simultaneously, Mafuyu arrives at the venue but she misses him by a few seconds. Ujima walks on the stage, trying to look as cool as possible. Unfortunately, all of this was for nothing as the loser ends up tripping and falling in front of everyone. Everyone seems concerned and the crowd is totally silent. Ujima decides to break the ice and tells everyone that they are supposed to laugh in such moments. Everyone starts laughing and instead of telling the crowd his policies, Ujima teaches them how to pronounce his name. Social anxiety leaves his body for the time being, but all the club members are experiencing secondhand embarrassment after hearing his speech. The voting finally begins and Ujima starts regretting his action. However, all the club members reassured him that the crowd really liked the speech and the reaction was mostly positive. Suddenly, Hidaka barges into the club room with giant cameras and informs everyone that the webcast of the election special will be beginning. Seeing Hidaka in a boy's uniform makes Ujima confused. The broadcast finally begins, and the election committee informs the students that the candidates need 604 votes to pass the primaries. Afterward, he announces the candidates who are predicted to win the primaries. Moheiji's and Satsuki's names are already on the list, but surprisingly, he also mentions Ujima's name in the independent contestants list. He reveals that Ujima's key policy is name correction, while the message he left for the voters was to not skip the rest. All the club members are confused to see such creepy statements and Ujima clears the misunderstanding, letting them know that Hidaka is the culprit behind this. The broadcast then starts featuring the food club room and Hidaka reveals that there were some smiles in the room before votes began to be counted, but the mood has turned serious since. Finally, the results of the first 100 votes are displayed. Satsuki is currently leading while Moheiji is in second place and Ujima takes third. Heizuki consoles everyone by letting them know that the votes of senior students haven't been counted yet and there is still hope for them. The results will be updated every 100 votes, which means that it will refresh 60 more times. They all check the results at the 15th update and Ujima seems to have gained a total of 138 votes. However, the worrying aspect of the results is the candidate who is placed fourth. Her results are increasing at a tremendous rate and could overtake Ujima as well. Soon after, the results were updated once again and this time, Ujima gained a total of 571 votes. The school is still counting votes and he only needs 33 more to qualify. However, the fourth contestant is still close by and can overtake Ujima at any given moment. Suddenly, the broadcast starts once again and the host informs that an independent candidate is projected to pass for the first time in 7 years. The candidate in fourth place only needs 20 more votes and a total of 140 votes haven't been counted yet. Finally, the last update arrives and the club members find out that Ujima has finally crossed the requirement and has officially passed the primary. However, the fourth candidate is still going strong and she only needs 8 more. Everyone is anxious, especially the failure, but Chisato helps him out by holding his hands. Surprisingly, all the club members held each other's hands while they waited for the final update to arrive. With this, the counting of votes is finished and the fourth candidate just needed 2 more votes to pass, but she eventually ends up failing the primary, with her not qualifying. Ujima is the only independent candidate among the others, which makes his chances skyrocket. All the club members start celebrating. Ryoji and Miru give Chisato all the money they earned during the primaries and ask her to use this money for the resources they might need in the future. She shows gratitude. Ujima promises to work hard. On the other hand, Yakumo's underlings inform him about the identity of the fourth candidate, Aim. They reveal that it was a sabotage attempt by the Katahira faction and she received quite some votes from the Public Affairs Commission. After they are done with primaries, the club members are on their way home and talk about how they are one step closer to winning the election. Chisato reveals that they still have a long way to go, and the club members need to prepare themselves for the upcoming camp. Afterward, Chisato buys chocolate from the convenience store and the two of them share it at night. Ujima mentions that Deki must be happy for them and how well they are progressing. The next day, Chisato holds a club meeting where Yakumo congratulates Ujima for passing the primaries. Afterward, he informs them that the actual election will be even more demanding than the primaries. He reveals that Ujima ended up getting around 600 votes while Satsuki got 27-0 and Moheiji got 15-0. This puts the club in a tough situation as they realize the gap between the other candidates and the nerd they chose. However, there is still a chance for Ujima to win, and the strategy is to get a better understanding of how votes work. Yakumo explains that in reality, the number of votes Satsuki got was 1,000 while Moheiji got around 14-0. These are called iron votes, and they are confirmed to be on each party's side. He adds the total iron votes and finds out that there are still 3,000 votes at the academy that are not iron. Yakumo wants Ujima to sway those voters and make sure that the voters playing the middle ground end up voting for him instead of someone else. One benefit that Ujima has is the fourth place candidate who couldn't win the primaries. All the votes she gathered might just come towards Ujima as he is another independent candidate similar to her. Chisato further informs that both the General and Finance Commission are a part of the Student Council, and rivalry between these two might seem like an infight to a lot of people. On the other hand, Ujima might look like an honorable candidate who is actually fighting to do well for the school. It will be even better if Ujima decides to run as a revolutionary and competes against Satsuki. For the primaries, Satsuki was able to sway those 17-0 votes for herself, and it is Ujima's goal to make them his own. Finally, all the club members participate in the training and start doing their respective jobs. Ayumu and Kiai are sewing a banner and glazing Yakumo at the same time. They start comparing him to Ujima and realize how pathetic the new candidates are. Meanwhile, Ujima and Isara are preparing food, and she compliments him for being able to cook food. Ujima gets distracted and accidentally cuts his finger. Chisato comes to check up on him and witnesses Isara licking, trying to stop the bleeding. The other girls start freaking out, but it is a common thing for Isara as she always does it for her little brothers. This reminds Chisato about her little brother and she suddenly becomes silent. After eating the food, everyone compliments the taste. Afterward, Chisato offers to do the dishes while Ujima can rest up a little. Later, Ujima is chilling in the open-air bath when Chisato pays him a visit. She joins him in the bath, resulting in Ujima starting to freak out a little. After a while, Ujima decides to get out of the bath and Chisato asks him the reason behind him being a wimp. She questions why he hasn't made a move on her. Before he can reply, Aburo arrives and Chisato is forced to go back to the girl's side. After the bath, Ujima heads back to his room and runs into the two sisters fighting each other. Apparently, it is their mother's death anniversary and Satsuki wants Heizuki to attend it along with the whole family. They finally notice the creep eavesdropping on them and decide to pause the argument for now. Ujima apologizes, which makes Heizuki tease Satsuki by letting her know that they both have kissed already. Satsuki is surprised and leaves without saying a single word. At night, Ujima and Aburo sleep next to each other, and he starts hugging Ujima mid-sleep. His grip is too strong for a weakling like Ujima to escape. Soon after, he needs to go to the toilet and forces Aburo to get off by whispering Moheiji's voice in his ears. After he's done using the restroom, Ujima notices Heizuki sitting alone outside and gives her a visit. She is drunk and can't seem to handle herself, forcing Ujima to drop her near the girls' hotel. He is not allowed to step inside and decides to leave Heizuki at the gate. However, she is too unstable to go to her room by herself and forces Ujima to do so. After dropping Heizuki in her room, Ujima steps outside and bumps into a girl in the hallway. She starts screaming and informs everyone that there is a creep in the hotel. All the girls get out of their rooms and start chasing him. Heizuki notices the commotion and realizes that Ujima is trying to run away from the girls. She allows him to hide in her room and requests a proper explanation. Afterward, she realizes that her older sister is the cause and apologizes for her actions. Nevertheless, the fact that Ujima is this close to her sister is still bugging Heizuki and she questions him about it. Satsuki starts thinking that there might be something special going on between the two, but Ujima denies it. Afterward, she asks Ujima if he really kissed her older sister. This time, Ujima agrees and tells her that it happened while she was drunk and he decided to take full advantage of it. This makes Heizuki push him onto the bed and get on top of him. She figures out that kissing Heizuki makes him worry about what she might do if she gets drunk, resulting in him always trying to help. Ujima clears up the misunderstanding and tells Satsuki that he is not in love with her older sister. Afterward, he tries to leave, but Satsuki advises him to stay a little longer as the girls are still searching for him around the hotel. Since the girls are patrolling the hallways, Satsuki and Ujima decide to play a game of shogi, and as expected from the failure, he keeps on losing. Seeing how the girls are not giving up, Satsuki gives him two choices. Number one is to give up and turn himself in. The second is to stay his whole life with her in that room. And the last is to play shogi until the girls stop looking for him. Afterward, the two of them start playing shogi once again, and Satsuki asks Ujima if he is aware of the reason Heizuki left home. She informs Ujima that one day, Heizuki suddenly holed herself up in her room and stopped talking to everyone. Satsuki tried asking her parents about it, but they were of no help. She seems to think that Heizuki might have told something to Ujima as they have kissed and stuff. However, he also is unaware of her situation. It was almost morning. Finally, the girls gave up and Heizuki took him out of the girls' hotel. Before parting ways, Heizuki asks Ujima to hang out again and he agrees. Afterward, she asks Ujima if they were to kiss each other, would he call that an accident too? Suddenly, the two of them hear someone close by, and it is none other than Heizuki. She notices the two of them as well and sprays water all over Ujima, telling him that it will help him cool down. Later that day, all the club members are doing their tasks and Aimu mentions the creep that was running around the girls' hotel. However, none of the girls know who that person might be. Chisato thinks that some girl might have sneaked that boy inside and Heizuki agrees, not knowing she is that girl. At night, Nozomi suggests something called recreation. According to her, recreation is an essential element of a camp, which also includes the good old test of courage. After the members agree, Nozomi informs them about the super scary creature she made to scare the hell out of everyone. However, her so-called super scary creation ends up being an adorable one. Later, the test of courage finally begins. Ujima and Chisato are a team, and they walk around the building in the dark. Suddenly, Ujima hears Heizuki screaming and tries to go towards her, but Chisato stops him midway. She thinks that this might be an excuse. Suddenly, the adorable ghost arrives and turns into a toilet from the toilet girl myth. Chisato goes ahead and lies between the ghost's legs, asking Ujima to help her. After seeing that the excuse isn't working on him, Chisato questions him about being this worried for Heizuki but can't seem to care about her. Afterward, she confronts him about the girls' hotel incident, revealing that she is aware of him being a famous creep. He reveals that Heizuki ended up getting drunk and he ended up taking her back to her room. Subsequently, Ujima tells Chisato that she has been acting weirdly since yesterday and reassures her that he will never leave her. However, he also adds the fact that the relationship between them is not that kind of love. Just then, Isara and Heizuki arrive and Chisato walks away with a gloomy face. At night, Ujima is walking back after taking a bath and notices Heizuki drinking again at the same spot. He asks Heizuki about the reason she hates her family, but she refuses to tell him. Suddenly, she gets up and confesses her love, saying that she meant it romantically and not the student-teacher's love. Ujima asks for some time to think about it, prompting Heizuki to give Satsuki a call and challenge her to play a shogi game. Surprisingly, Heizuki told Satsuki that she would tell her anything if she managed to beat Heizuki. Finally, the game between the drunken older sister and the strict younger sister starts. Heizuki teases Satsuki by mentioning the kiss, which makes her lose focus and make petty mistakes. Seeing how a kiss is enough to rile her up, Heizuki tells Satsuki that there is still so much for her to learn. Heizuki begins telling Ujima that Satsuki's mother is the second wife. Turns out, she used to be a mistress and became their father's second wife after Heizuki's mother passed away. She mocks Satsuki for being born after they got married, or she would have been called a mistress child. Satsuki starts getting angry and tells her to stop, but Heizuki continues. Eventually, Satsuki reaches her limits and slaps the hell out of Heizuki. This makes her think that Satsuki might be forfeiting the match, but she continues on playing. After a few moves, Heizuki puts her in a tough situation. Afterward, Heizuki starts telling them about a childhood story when she hit her head and the blood loss was severe. Her blood type is Rh negative, and no one could donate their blood to her apart from Satsuki's mother. She further explains that it was Satsuki's mother who gave birth to Heizuki instead of the first wife. Long before Heizuki was born, the first wife had to remove her due to an illness. This resulted in many of their relatives forcing her dad to abandon the first wife, but he decided to stay with her. In order to fool the relatives, her dad took Heizuki in to raise her as his legitimate child. Surprisingly, the first wife, who had every right to hate Heizuki, did nothing but shower her with love all her life. Eventually, she passed away due to the illness and the mistress became his wife. Heizuki found out about this accident when a relative accidentally let it slip and the shock was too much for her to continue living with everyone. Heizuki still can't fully accept the second wife as her mother, as the one who raised and took care of her was the first wife. She starts crying and telling them that accepting the second wife would be similar to accepting that the first wife never existed, and that is the reason she can't forgive her family. Satsuki begins to cry as well and apologizes to Heizuki for not having a clue about this. Later, Yakumo's underlings inform him that Ujima met with Satsuki late at night and there is a chance of her using this against him. However, Yakumo thinks that she would have used the incident if she wanted to hurt Ujima. Chisato is sleeping and dreaming about giving chocolate to her little brother Daiki. After waking up, she gets ready for school and goes to Ujima's apartment. She informs him that their campaign for the main election will be starting today. On the other hand, Yakumo is conducting a meeting, and all the Public Safety Commission members are gathered. He informs them that even though they are not allowed to compete in this year's election, they still have a chance at the next one. He further explains that if Satsuki ends up winning the elections, public safety will have a rough time in the next election. However, they can easily take care of this situation if someone like Ujima ends up winning the election. For this reason, the Public Safety Commission will be supporting Ujima in this election. He lets everyone know to keep this a secret, especially from the Katahira faction. Meanwhile, Ujima and Chisato are heading towards the school, and he suddenly bumps into a girl. That girl doesn't seem to know much about the candidates as she is attending school after a while. Nevertheless, Ujima asks the girl for her support, and she agrees. Afterward, he notices the two sisters having an argument once again. Satsuki accuses Heizuki of using a dirty trick, and she leaves after advising her little sister to analyze the opponent better. Subsequently, Satsuki notices the creep hiding behind the tree and listens to their conversation. Satsuki informs him that Heizuki tricked her as that shogi match was well within her reach. According to Satsuki, her older sister most likely started talking about the past to distract her. Surprisingly, the result of the match mattered to Satsuki as Ujima was the prize. Suddenly, Chisato makes an appearance and questions Ujima about her relationship with Satsuki. She replies that the two of them were not discussing strategies or anything regarding the election as it was more of a private discussion. Chisato is surprised to hear the word private discussion and remains angry at Ujima the whole way back. They both finally reach the spot where all the club members are gathered. Heizuki comes up to Ujima and shows her gratitude for helping her and Satsuki make up. Afterward, Nozomi reveals the new project she was working on, and it is a whole stage specifically made for the campaign. The club members took Yakumo's advice and placed the stage at a location where it would be visible to almost every student. After finding out that Mafuyu is the one responsible for claiming the spot, he thanks her and the two of them begin their fake confession play. Surprisingly, Chisato doesn't take part in it this time and she asks them to hand out the flyers instead. Afterward, Hidaka makes an appearance, and this time she is dressed up as a girl. She informs them that the ASP assigned her to report on Ujima throughout the election. Finally, the flyers were ready and so were the stage. Ujima begins his speech while the other club members are busy handing out the flyers. Isara is doing her job as well when suddenly her class fellows arrive and start troubling her. Ujima, who is on the stage, notices this and runs towards her to help Isara out. Just when he is about to lash out at them, Chisato arrives and stops him. She tells him that it is better not to do something when he is in the midst of campaigning. Thankfully, the Public Safety Commission arrives and confronts the girls for teasing Isara. They note their names and inform them that their punishment will be soon decided. After they leave, Isara shows gratitude to Ujima for standing up for her even though he couldn't do a single thing. Isara further informs them that she is more scared of public security than the girls after seeing what happened to one of her classmates. Apparently, the girl was a part of the Yusawa incident which took place a few months ago when an anonymous source tipped off the Public Safety Commission that a financial aid student had shoplifted from the school store. Yusawa got a little too excited and revealed her name to everyone. This resulted in her getting constantly picked on to the point where she had to leave the school. Heizuki informs Isara that what happened to her was rare as the Public Security Commission doesn't really care about the financial aid student. Later, Hidaka informs them that the general aid program was started by the school to increase the population, which later turned into the students working at certain factories and earning their own tuition fee. Additionally, they are not allowed to join clubs or work part-time jobs so they can focus on the actual work. Hearing this sparked some motivation in Ujima's heart, and he tells everyone that he wants to end the discrimination against financial aid students. On the other hand, Usawa finally returns to the Public Safety Commission and informs Yakumo that she will be resuming her duties as the commissioner. Meanwhile, Ujima and Chisato are visiting the clubs and gaining their support. Suddenly, She asks Ujima if he really wants to add the financial aid issue to his manifesto, as all their plan was to stop the club from getting disbanded. She further tells Ujima that their main goal is to win the elections and a lot of their voters might disagree with the financial aid issue. Seeing how he is still not changing his stance, Chisato starts asking him the reason he wants to leave her behind. She starts crying and Ujima reassures her that he will always be with her no matter what. Later, Usawa and Yakumo are discussing that loser candidate, and Usawa inquires if he would be willing to become the public safety puppet after winning the election. Yakumo replies that they are only siding with him, so he gets elected. She walks away after advising Yakumo to not trust people this easily or she might have to take care of him on her own. At the end of the day, Hidaka reveals that Ujima is rated highest among the candidates, and everyone seems to be surprised to hear about it. Afterward, Ujima, Chisato, and Mafuyu are heading home and notice Mikairu trying to play a harmonica. He takes it from her and tries to play it, not realizing that he just indirectly kissed her. Chisato starts confronting him for being a thirsty lad and he tries to run away. Suddenly, a truck comes at full speed and hits Ujima. In the past, Ujima was still a little baby and didn't want to go to school. Chisato stepped out of the apartment next door and gave Ujima half of her chocolate. He decided to eat it, which put a huge smile on her face. From that day onwards, he kept on receiving chocolates from her until one day he rejected them. This reminded Chisato of her little brother who passed away and she started crying. This made Ujima regret his actions and he eventually accepted the chocolate. Back to the present, the three girls are waiting in the hospital and a clumsy fool comes out of the doctor's room. He informed them that everything was alright, and they just needed to re-examine him tomorrow. Meanwhile, Satsuki enters the food club in a hurry and asks the members about Ujima. She quickly calms down after hearing from Heizuki that he is unhurt. After Satsuki is done worrying about him, she starts roasting the idiot for being this careless when suddenly he steps inside the room. He seems to be doing fine while on the other hand, Chisato is clinging onto him and doesn't want to let go. She comes inside his apartment with him and refuses to leave even when he wants to take a bath. Seeing her unwavering determination to not let go pisses him and he rips off his shirt. Ujima turns on the shower and both of them end up taking the shower together. He gets even angrier and punches the washroom mirror, letting her know that he is still present and is not going anywhere. Chisato keeps on calling him a liar and he eventually slaps her on the face, which prompts her to run away and bring back a chocolate with her. She asks Ujima to take half of it and stay by her side. Ujima starts telling her that she only sees him as Daiki's replacement. He further tells her that she only sees Daiki through him and that is the reason this can't be called love. Eventually, Ujima asks Chisato to eat it by herself as he won't be a replacement for Daiki anymore. She takes a bite of it and starts throwing up right away. The next day, the campaign moves forward as planned and Ujima delivers the speeches he is supposed to. Later, he visits the club room and notices Mikairu trying to find something under the table. Ujima takes a look at the stats and is happy to see that he is still on the top. Mikairu takes a look at him and realizes that he might be sad inside despite the fact that he is trying to appear happy. He agrees and informs Mikairu that half of his sadness might be due to what happened with Chisato. Afterward, he returns the harmonica and lets Mikairu know that it was broken after the accident. Luckily, he uses one of his very few talents to fix it and now it is fully functioning unlike before. Ujima asks about the name Kana engraved on the back of the harmonica and Mikairu replies the harmonica belongs to Kana and it was given to Mikairu by her. Kana has been missing for quite a while and the sole reason Mikairu came to this school was to look for her. Hearing the harmonica makes Yakumo act up and he suddenly arrives while calling Kana's name. However, he ends up making a bad excuse for this embarrassing act and tells Ujima that he needs to discuss something. Yakumo lets Ujima know that he won't allow him to address the financial aid students issue in his manifesto. He lets him know that something like this issue is to be resolved after being elected and nothing will happen in the first place if he ends up losing. Later that day, Ujima visits the hospital for a re-examination. He accidentally bumps into Haida who starts tearing up after looking at Ujima's face. Haida lets him know that she has been having trouble with her contacts, hence the reason behind her hospital visit. Suddenly, he notices Yakumo wandering around in the hospital and his creepy personality forces Ujima to stalk him. He follows him outside the hospital where Yakumo is on call with another person. He talks about accepting some sort of deal and asks the other person to not abandon Kana as the accident was completely Usawa's fault. Afterward, Yakumo re-enters the hospital and visits the top floor, where Kana is admitted. Ujima decides to follow him and visits Kana's room, where Yakumo is already present. Yakumo asks Ujima about her business with Kana when suddenly, one of his underlings knocks the loser out. After a while, Ujima gains consciousness, but he is handcuffed and held in an unknown room. Yakumo and his underlings are present right in front of him. He removes Ujima's handcuff after making sure that he won't be causing them trouble. Afterward, Yakumo asks Ujima about the stuff he found out about and how much he knows. He starts off by informing Yakumo that Kana owns the harmonica that Mikairu currently has. Additionally, Yakumo made a deal with someone so Kana could recover her consciousness, and Usawa seems to be involved in this deal. Yakumo is surprised to see how much information has been leaked and realizes that he has made a grave blunder. Later, Yakumo begins telling Ujima about the stuff they do and informs him that the public safety ended up hiring agents also termed as spies. They act as normal students but keep an eye on other students as well. This allows the commission to deal with issues before they develop into serious incidents. Once an agent completes their training, they are assigned to an officer. Kana was one of the agents assigned to Yakumo and Mikairu was the other. Afterward, Yakumo lets him know that he has already told him more than enough and it might be hard to let him go at this point. The conversation begins and Yakumo lets Ujima know that Kana was caught in some sort of accident last December. According to the Public Safety Commission, Kana was being targeted while she was investigating something. The memory card which held the evidence was destroyed and Kana has been in a coma ever since. However, the news of her accident has been kept a secret. The hospital where she has been receiving treatment belongs to a former public safety member. On the other hand, Mafuyu pays Chisato a visit who is holed up inside her room. Chisato lets her know that she doesn't care about the food club or the election anymore. Meanwhile, Yakumo informs Ujima that they have a slight problem, which is that the hospital is affiliated with the Katahira faction. This is an interval faction between the Public Safety Commission and Yakumo's rivals. One of their conditions for admitting her into the hospital was to appoint Usawa as Public Safety Commissioner. Ujima starts confronting the president for making such an important decision based on such a petty request. Yakumo answers back that he couldn't let Kana meet her demise, unlike someone who heartlessly refused to eat Chisato's chocolate. Hearing this statement made Ujima surprised, and Yakumo continued to reveal even more information. According to him, after Chisato lost her brother, she started depending on him for support. He knew that if Chisato ever came to terms with her brother's demise, then she would have no need for him, which eventually led him to use Daiki as an excuse to hide from his own feelings. Additionally, every time he tries to fall in love with another girl, Chisato has always been in the back of his mind. Yakumo then wishes that the situation was this simple for him, as he might lose someone he loves. On the other hand, Mafuyu tells Chisato that she is aware of their fight and wants her to make up with Ujima. Mafuyu advises her to make up with him or things might get even worse. Afterward, Mafuyu walks towards the closet to take out some clothes for her, just to come across a box full of half-eaten chocolate. Mafuyu also realizes that she has been using that good-for-nothing fool as a replacement for her brother. She also advises Chisato to confess her love to him, as she can't treat him as a replacement. Chisato replies and tells Mafuyu to worry about herself as well, considering she is in love with him. She also asks Mafuyu if she is holding back for the sake of Chisato or because of the scar she got from surgery. This makes Mafuyu cry as well, and she gives Chisato a hug, telling her to stop talking. On the other hand, Yakumo tells Ujima that if a new party comes to power, they will expose the public safety funds that were used for her treatment. Ujima was Yakumo's only hope, and he performed beyond his expectations. However, things have changed, as he has received orders from the Katahira faction to cease all support for Ujima or they'll cease all treatment for Kana. Meanwhile, Chisato informs Mafuyu that she wants someone to forgive her. Daiki couldn't eat his favorite chocolate the day he passed away, and it made Chisato overjoyed the moment Ujima ate it. Afterward, Mafuyu gets up and changes into clothes that reveal her scar. She gets out and plans to face reality and expose the scar to Ujima. Chisato manages to catch up with her and gives Mafuyu a big hug, asking her to stop. On the other hand, Ujima gets furious after hearing that Mikairu has no idea about Kana's whereabouts. Yakumo replies that her situation is top secret even among the public safety, and he would be held accountable for exposing it. In the end, Yakumo informs him that their partnership ends here. Furthermore, he offers to try and keep the food club from disbanding as a thank you for his support. However, Ujima replies that their partnership was not fruitless, as he will be winning the election. Unexpectedly, Ujima gives Mikairu a call and tells her the whereabouts of Kana. Yakumo panics and sends his man to search the hospital for Mikairu. They head over there as well, but Mikairu already succeeded in taking her away. This makes Yakumo furious, and he threatens to dispose of Ujima if something happens to Kana. Meanwhile, Mikairu took Kana outside and started playing the song that she taught her. Surprisingly, hearing the mediocre music makes Kana come back to her senses, and Mikairu gives her a huge hug. Just then, Yakumo also arrives and starts crying after seeing Kana's condition and shows his gratitude to Ujima. After returning back home, Chisato comes over to talk to Ujima and eats a chocolate, signaling that she is starting to overcome her fears. The next few days are peaceful, and Ujima is still on the top among the other candidates. Finally, tomorrow is the day of elections, and everyone seems to be excited. Later, Chisato and Ujima are on their way home when a stranger asks them to do him a favor. Surprisingly, the work they need to do is to dress up as a bride and groom for a mock wedding. Ujima tried kissing Chisato but was embarrassed after finding out that he didn't need to from the manager. After they are done with the work, a few children come to greet them which remind Ujima of their childhood. Afterward, the two of them are on their way back home, talking about how tasty the free dinner was. Chisato suddenly stops and asks Ujima to recreate the kiss they couldn't do before. Unfortunately, his lucky moment is stolen by a group of students who use tasers to make both of them unconscious. Ujima finally wakes up in the morning and receives a call from an unknown number. He uses a soundboard to tell him that Chisato is in their possession. He ordered him to come to the phone booth in front of the school gate at 7 a.m. The person also warns him that Chisato can get hurt if he fails to comply. Not having much time left, Ujima runs as fast as he can. He eventually manages to reach the phone booth where he receives another call. This time, the voice orders him to go to the phone booth by the seaside park at 7:30. The same voice also orders him not to speak to anyone about this until the election is over. On the other hand, Kana wakes up and finds Yakumo and Mikairu by her side. Just as she is about to tell him something important, Usawa pays her a visit and tells Yakumo to perform his tasks as the president can't be late on such days. Meanwhile, the food club members are freaking out as Ujima has yet to make an appearance. Suddenly, Hidaka receives a notification and reveals that SP has posted an exposed article on Ujima. Mifuyu gives Ujima a call and informs him about the article, but he decides to cut the call and runs towards the next location. The phone booth is inside the park, and he decides to climb the fence. This time, the voice praises him for not telling Mifuyu about the situation and tells Ujima to look under the phone. He finds Chisato's shirt under the phone and the voice continues on telling him the next location. At the food club, the members can't reach Chisato's phone. At the hospital, Usawa talks about how Kana was able to wake up after hearing that awful song. Afterward, Usawa starts asking Kana about her last mission and if there were any photos to prove what she was investigating. Mikairu took a look at Usawa and saw a dark color surrounding her. She told Kana about it in code words, and she instantly understood. On the other hand, Yakumo visits the food club to ask about Ujima. Just then, Isara arrives and tells everyone that she was able to buy them some time and Ujima will be the last to make the speech. Now it is all up to Ujima, as if he doesn't arrive by that time, he will be automatically disqualified. Simultaneously, Hidaka arrives and is now dressed up as a girl. She reveals that SP had connections with the General Affairs Commissions. She further informs them that she was forced to wear both boys' and girls' uniforms on different occasions so it can be possible to collect news anywhere. However, their main objective was to record her as a boy and a girl in order to increase the number of club members. They were able to request more funds this way while Hidaka was stuck cross-dressing for them. After reaching the location, the next spot the voice tells him about is the Yotsuba Bridge. He tries to run once again but bumps into Ayumu and her friends. However, he ignores them and heads over to the next location. Heizuki is told by Ayumu that Ujima was seen near the Asaoka Academy and his appearance was similar to a homeless man. This makes Yakumo realize that someone must be obstructing him from attending the election. Suddenly, Yakumo receives a call from Kana who tells him the password of her phone. Furthermore, Kana warns him about Usawa and tells him that she is most likely the culprit. On the other hand, Satsuki was done with her speech and Ujima was the last one, but he still hadn't arrived. Meanwhile, Ujima reaches the phone booth and this time the voice tells him to make an excuse for not showing up. He tells Ujima to announce that he was scared to show up so that the election wouldn't be declared null or void due to the incident. Just as he is about to tell Ujima about the next location, the call is hijacked by Yakumo and he informs Ujima about the location where Chisato is. At the same time, Yakumo enters Usawa's room and catches her talking to Ujima. Afterward, he informs Usawa that all the pictures taken by her camera are automatically sent to her smartphone and it also includes the picture from that night. Once they checked the pictures, Yakumo found evidence of a Katahira faction member and General Affairs officer engaging in a backroom deal. Additionally, they also found evidence that Usawa was the one who hit Kana that day. He then puts her under arrest, but she doesn't seem fazed. Usawa lets him know that Ujima will be losing the election no matter what. And if the General Affairs end up winning the election, the Katahira faction will be in power once again. On the other hand, Ujima finally reaches the spot where Chisato is present and the first thing she asks him is regarding the election. However, he tries to act cool and tells Chisato that she is more important than elections. However, she doesn't seem impressed by this statement and tells him that he belongs to more than just himself at the moment. Kiai and Ayumu arrive on cycles and offer to take them to the venue. Eventually, he arrives at the venue and just as he is about to start his speech, the time runs out. Nevertheless, he picks up the mic and tries to make the speech. The people managing the elections try to stop him, but Satsuki intervenes and tells them to let the other candidate talk. Thankfully, the managers receive a call from Yakumo who allows Ujima to make the speech. Ujima starts off his speech by letting everyone know that he was working with Yakumo in order to win the elections. He figured everything from start to finish due to his support. He further informs the people that even though winning the elections seems like the most important thing, he couldn't bring himself to lie anymore. At first, he only wanted to save the food club, but working for the election made him realize that he loves all the students at the academy. This is the reason he hates watching them fight amongst themselves and wants to do his best to stop all the conflict. In the end, he tells them that it is okay even if he ends up losing the election, as he was able to say everything he wanted. Everyone starts clapping, and with this, the speech comes to its conclusion. A few days later, everyone is present at the food club and are hanging out with each other. Yakumo comments that Ujima's approach was very unusual, and he didn't make any promises. Simultaneously, Satsuki, also the new club member, arrives and asks if they have seen President Ujima. Heizuki pities Satsuki, as being a vice president must be a lot of work, and informs her that he has gone out with Chisato. Meanwhile, Ujima and Chisato are at Daiki's grave, and after finishing up with the prayers, Ujima whips out a chocolate. They both share the moment by kissing each other. This was all about Ujima and his love for the food club. Will he actually do a good job being a president? Comment food below and let us know. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon for more plot-filled reviews.